Ensign Tate never expected she'd be running the tactical station within 6 weeks of transferring to the Enterprise. Transporter Chief Salazar was unable to transport 47 crew members, and Goval unlinked himself from Croesus. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
That didn't hit the same as when you wrote it, probably.
Goval and Croesus, man.
Yeah, Goval and Croesus. But yes, I'm doing great. Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Huskin. Today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 7, Episode 1, Descent, Part 2, written by Renee Echevarria, directed by Alexander Singer. This was September 18th, 1993. Where were you? And Sirach, how are you today?
I'm doing well. And I can see you're kind of under the weather, so, hats off to you for powering through.
We've all done it. I remember there were times where you'd be like, I'm not feeling well. I'm like, all right, I'll just talk more. And you're like, cool.
Yeah. And I'll just talk more.
Beautiful. I do want to get this started, though, by saying it is Season 7. We're kicking in to that final season. And, oh, by the way, everybody at home, we've got a very special guest coming up in the second segment, and theoretically. And I want to be asking this person all about the vibes of coming into the final season. And actually, Sirach, real quick, do you remember coming in to the 7th season of Deep Space Nine? Like, did you all know this is the last season, this is the end? Was it sad? Was it bittersweet? Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, I think we knew it was the last season because Next Generation ended on 7. So we were like, expecting to end on 7 and not expecting to go longer or farther than they did. Also, they signed you earlier to those contracts because the first contract you sign is a 5-year contract, if I'm not mistaken. And then you renegotiate for the 6th year and then again for the 7th year. And so that it's the last year, essentially. So those were the indicators for us. And by that point, you're like already in the mix. You're already comfortable with the character. You're already, been doing this for a while now, and there's nothing really to discover other than just telling the stories that are written. So there's a level of confidence that comes in there. There's a level of this is the last go around. There's a feel of like, yeah, this is the last, the final hoorah type of thing. But because it's 26 episodes, it lasts so long, it doesn't feel like, goodbye hugs and the last week of school.
Yeah.
It feels like the last school year. It feels like being a senior.
Senioritis.
When you're a senior and you're already established, you already know all the teachers, you know everybody at the school, you're already made it past the trying to fit in phase, you already made it past the whether you're cool or not phase. You've made it past a lot of the hurdles that you have in, adolescence. And now you're more sure of yourself, right? You're more confident. You're at the top level tier. So I feel that's what it feels like going into season 7.
So now you watching this for the very first time, what did you think of this episode? Because I must have seen this a bunch of times. I remember having this VHS tape. This feels like one of those iconic two-parters because you got the return of Lore, you've got the return of Hugh, you got the return of Croesus and Goval. I don't know. What do you think of this? Did you enjoy it?
Well, I don't think it's as good as Best of Both Worlds. As far as, they really set the standard high with that. It's so memorable. It was so good. And then this feels like it's a junior grade episode of Best of Both Worlds, a junior grade 2-parter, right? Where they close the season out and then they open it back up, and that's what it is. And so, and what I can say that I noticed, for some reasons, I noticed um, that the set felt upgraded. I felt like
Yeah.
there was some upgrades to the way the set design was. It felt like their budget got bigger or something.
Yeah, or
I don't
like
know.
it felt like the lighting was a little bit brighter too. Like suddenly,
Yeah,
like I noticed the same thing. It just kind of seemed a little bit more colorful, a little bit brighter. Maybe that's a Doug Drexler question. But there was another thing I noticed that must have been done. I feel like it must have been done in the HD uh upresing of this stuff was when Lore dies. I don't remember seeing his pupil just shrink away and disappear. I don't know if you saw that, but I had to rewind. I was like, wait, did I just see his
oh,
pupil disappear? And I don't remember that being I don't think that was 90s technology. I feel like that was something that they added. Like his little black pupil just went shrink, 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 and disappeared. Kind of a cute little addition.
yeah. I didn't see that actual thing, but I did feel a level of quality that felt superior to the first seasons. There was something there that was, I don't know if their budget's bigger, so they have more time to design better sets, but it felt like it was a higher quality. Now, it may have been lit differently. I don't know if they remastered things. There were just shots there that I felt um, the quality of the set looked better. And that included the Borg spaces that they were in, that included the bridge space that they were in. Um, and just even the outdoor set when Lore and Data were standing in front of a concrete facade outside, supposedly this concrete building that they were looking at. I thought that looked really good, and I was wondering, like, is that location somewhere? Like, where are they? Where they got that concrete building in the backdrop that really looked like there's no windows on it. It looked really, kind of futuristic looking building, but so all of those things felt like visually an upgrade on set design and essentially budget. And so I imagine that because Next Generation is on its seventh season, and I don't know if they had done a film at this point. Had they done a film at this point yet, or did they start doing the films after they finished?
Yeah, the first film was basically, I think it was 6 months after season 7 ended. Like they
Okay.
just went right into it.
Okay. So if the first film was 6 months after this season ends, I imagine they already knew they were going to do a film at this point because just pre-production and all of the you know green lights that have to be lit for a film to be made. So I'm imagining their budget got bigger in season 7 because they knew they were going to move on to films. This was also an established show for Paramount at this point, and I imagine their season 7 budget got bigger. And just an example of why that could be true is usually salaries for people get bigger by season 7. So if your actors are going to get a higher pay than they did before that. So I imagine there's a bigger budget in general. And I felt like that budget was translated on screen with quality.
I have a correction. It actually came out in 96, so that was a full year and a half or 2 years after season 7 ended. Because I checked myself. I was like, wait, how can they shoot a whole
Okay.
movie? Like that's a
Yeah,
real quick turnaround. So
that's
yeah,
quick.
it was 96 and this ended midway through 94. It didn't feel like that much of a wait back then. But I
Okay.
have an answer to where they shot the exteriors.
Yeah, for the lower data scene with the concrete
Yeah,
facade.
it was at the Brandeis Bardin Institute, specifically the House of the Book building in Simi Valley, California. Interesting.
Okay.
All right. So,
Good location scouting for the people who did that because it did look exotic and it looked like it was otherworldly. That
location
building is
scouting is such a fun job.
hell, they killed that one because I was looking at that place like, where is that? Did they build that? Is that a Photoshop backdrop? I was confused for a while, but then it looked like it was really on location because when they did the reverse angles, they were outdoors somewhere. So good to know that Simi Valley has that structure, guys. If you ever in California want to check out that location,
Yeah, it's in the hills outside of Simi Valley. And by the way, Simi Valley was where Aaron Eisenberg lived. So I would frequent that area for sure. Um, the other thing I noticed with that exterior set is they definitely changed up the lighting, the color scale in post
yes,
to make it yellower or more orange, just to make it feel like it's otherworldly, to make it feel like you're not literally in Southern California like every other exterior scene. They're like, well,
yeah,
it's going to have the same trees and the same weeds as Southern California, but maybe we can yellow it up so it doesn't look like it as much. But that, it did help. It did have the desired effect. I also was thinking this came out in September, um, as usual for the first episode of a season, which means they shot that thing in the LA area in the summer. So it was probably pretty hot out there. Long,
oh
hot
yeah,
days.
yeah. They know when to cook us in those uniforms when they want to. Uh, but yeah, I've had my own experience with the hot weather desert location shots. But I think this episode, it wasn't blowing me away, but I did like elements about it, and there were things that I thought were great. The big thing I liked was the separation of the cast into three major groups.
I love that.
And every time I put in my notes, away team, away team, away team, because you're the one that got me to really pay attention to away teams and the groupings and pairings of people that they use on away team. Usually the grouping is somebody in that group is going to be of utility to the problem solving because they have a
Right.
special set of skills, right?
Yes.
So yeah. So this episode, what I liked was the away teams of Worf and Riker with their group. Then you had Picard, Troy, and Geordi, essentially with Data, but that was the other away team. And
Yep.
then you had Dr. Crusher at the helm, and I don't know if we've ever seen her command the ship. I think this is
No.
the first time,
Yeah.
and that was like another storyline. So what we really had was three separate kind of stories being woven into the whole script, and I thought that was good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's always fun to see when they're split off into two or three groups because then it allows the individuals to shine a little bit more than if you got seven people in a cluster and everybody says one line. This way they get their own scenes where, you got that interpersonal relationship, that communication going on. And the moments with Geordi and Data were great. Beverly Crusher's scenes were obviously really cool and iconic because I do believe it was the first time we saw her. And it wasn't like she was in charge of like Riker and Data and Geordi, and she was basically in charge of a bunch of scrubs and needed to whip them into shape. So that's an even tougher task. But
Yeah.
there was something where I thought of you where I was like, oh my God, Sirach finally got what he wanted. And that was at the very end of the episode. Picard says, Captain's log, whatever he says. And he says, Mr. LaForge remains under Dr. Crusher's care. And I remember how you said, we never get an update of somebody that like may have died or almost died, like Geordi, and we're just supposed
Yeah.
to assume that he survived. We're like, okay, well, I guess I'll find out next week if he's still there. And so
Yeah.
this way we actually got a little closure there. It shouldn't be too much to ask for to like know, did he make it? Did he not make it? So that was cool.
Yeah, and that was the meat of this episode. Ultimately, was the relationship that I think it was the relationship that Jordy has with Data. Because we've grown to watch them become friends and really have each other's back, and we've seen Data now come out many times and say Jordy is my best friend. LaForge is my best friend, and I think that's a sweet element of the show that I like between them. I like that relationship they have. It's the unlikely duo of, best friend buddies that come from completely two different universes or backgrounds, but respect each other and learned about each other and grew along the way into this great friendship. It's one of the great friendships of Star Trek, I believe. And and that was the thing that kind of pulled at me with in this episode was watching Data essentially be so violent to his friend and be
Yeah.
so cruel and basically torture and punish his friend, which we can get into all of that, but for me I was like, isn't that the opposite of emotions? it, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, um you would have to be emotionless to pull that off, to like,
Right.
you know what I mean? To
Like a
not see any
sociopath.
sympathy. Yeah, like a sociopath. Like you don't remember me, bro. You don't remember we just had dinner last night and this and that. And like, you'd have to have no emotions, I would think. Like, it couldn't be just the emotion of anger, because I think even anger still needs it needs fuel. It needs fuel, like a fire, right? If you don't, if somebody's angry and you ball yourself up and they just beat you up, eventually they're going to stop beating you up because the anger is going to
I sure
subside.
hope so.
Well, yeah, you hope so. We all hope so. But eventually the anger subsides. I punched you. You submitted. You're incapacitated. You're knocked out. And I'm not going to just keep going and going and going. I'm just eventually my anger has reached its point of sufficiency, where it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I've 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 emptied the tank of my anger. And so I feel like nobody was giving Data enough fuel for the anger, for it to be as malicious as it was in the way it was. To me, that wasn't necessarily the right way. It should have been emotionless, because that's what it would take. And a program that would remove all of its emotions, because I feel like Data was already leaning towards learning emotions.
Mhm.
And so removing that would make him more like that.
And they did mention something about his ethical chip or his ethical program, right? That tells him even if he can't feel it or sense it or intuit it, he has a program that tells him, the morality of what's right and what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to reactivate that because that was taken off. And that's a really interesting way to look at things, is that it's been programmed in him. Kicking a puppy is wrong, feeding a puppy is right. Like, now of course there's way more complex possibilities in there, uh in life, but it's a pretty useful program to have. I did want to say one thing on that though, and that was when Data was pretending to be Picard for that moment. When he did Picard's voice to get Geordi to be like, "Oh,
Oh
hurry,
yes. Oh
Data
yeah.
was just here." I'm like, okay,
Yes.
okay, that's pretty good, because he was totally messing with him, and he's like, my brother suggested that I work on developing my sense of humor. What do you think?" And Geordi says, "I think it needs a lot of work." I'm like, "No, it does not. That was perfect. That was
it
excellent."
was it was excellent. It's just the fact that you're the butt of the joke, but yes. The joke was perfectly executed by him. I thought that was well written too.
Mhm.
And it was funny because uh, when during that scene, he's like, Geordie, and he uses Picard's voice, right? And he's like, Captain, I think Data's here, and we got to get out of here. And he's like, shh, and he shushes him, right? The shush in itself was hilarious to me. I was like, is he shushing? Is he shushing him? So yeah, I enjoyed that moment right there a lot.
There was
Very, very funny.
one other thing there that I wanted to touch on before we go into our second segment with a very special guest, which is I felt as though maybe they underutilized Hugh the Borg. I feel like they brought this character back that had such an important and vital role before, and really good story. And they brought him back, and he was just kind of almost like an in and out piece. You know, he had like 3 scenes. And I could just sense that in the writer's room, they're thinking, we got to have something really big, you know? So it's going to be like bringing lore back. There's the Borg. Then we'll bring in Hugh. The people will lose it. There's all these things, but there comes a point where you only have 43 minutes to tell the story. And if you bring in too many elements, it might lose something. And I feel like the one thing that did suffer was Hugh's story. I understand why they brought him in. It's a cool story. It's a cool thing to have happened, but I feel like they might have wanted to save that for its own full episode, potentially.
Yeah, it got lost in the mix. I'd agree with you 100% on that. It felt like it got lost in the mix. I mean, the first episode, this Descent Part 1, remember Picard is wrestling with the fact that he let Hugh go. He had him right there, and he could have ended this, and he was wrestling with all of that, and whether he had done the right thing. You know, it's like letting this person go that's going to become a threat later on down the line. Then we see that he's not the threat, right? That he's not really this threat that he thought he would be. He's actually been conned and manipulated by Lore's character.
Yeah.
And yeah, I felt like there wasn't enough of a redemptive arc for him, a moment of, you know, where he gets the chance to be acknowledged as, you know, doing the right thing or something to that effect. He was kind of, you know, tossed in the story in this particular episode, given a little bit of backstory. He gave us some backstory on lore, but he didn't stand on the same level of principles that he did on the first episode when we watched him, because he had a very good kind of debate with Picard based on morality, based on his right to exist, based on his individuality. And there were really good arguments there that spoke to why he was not quote unquote a Borg, and why he was different, and why he
Right.
had earned his freedom, right? Or he deserved a freedom. And I think they could have piggybacked more on that element, because that's a big part of that first time we saw Hugh. And it didn't seem like the choices that he made with that freedom justified his argument in the first part of it. You see what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah, definitely.
in the first time we saw Hugh, he left on such a high note as, you know, a person who argued his point, who won his freedom through debate with one of the great, you know, minds of the Federation, in our Captain Picard. And that was one of the things we walked away with and said, that's a great episode. Hugh, you know, won the ideological debate with Picard and earned himself a ticket to freedom. He doesn't come back with that same level of righteousness that he stood on when he exited the first time. He comes back in now as kind of a lost character who found himself manipulated, who didn't know how to handle the right to choose and the individuality, and so it looks like he mismanaged the thing that he fought for.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it doesn't show him in the best light either. I felt like they could have written it better.
Yeah. Just not 100% sure on the Hugh situation. I don't know if it needed more time to breathe or a different angle to hit. I mean, it still worked. It worked fine. We get it. We understand the story. You know, he had a great story of like, they gave him his individuality, but then when he went back, he didn't know how to handle it, and it spread like wildfire, and it kind of messed up a bunch of other Borg. I get it. It all makes sense. I just wish there was maybe more to it. It could have been its own episode, maybe.
And then Riker says, like, Hugh gives his whole explanation, like, you know, then I went back, and then the people couldn't handle it, and we revolted, and then you know, we needed this, and then Riker's like, my bad, our bad, like,
Yeah.
somebody, it's like,
Yeah.
our bad. Like,
So are you going to help us or what?
exactly.
Anyway. All right, we're gonna jump to our break real quick, everybody. So stick around. We will be right back on the Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody! Welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello.
let's just get into it. We have a
Yeah.
very, very special guest. We are honored and grateful that Gates McFadden, Dr. Crusher, is joining us right now. How you doing, Gates?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm just one of all of us. You know what I mean? Like, it's so funny. You guys are awesome, and it's a pleasure. It's really great. So I'm very happy to be here.
Well, you're an exceptional one of all of us. It is an honor to have you, Gates. I've now been watching this show for 6 seasons. We're on the 7th season, and
Wow.
so I've gotten a chance to watch your work. And I know you as a human being, but I never knew your work on the show in the level of detail that I do now. And I am so impressed by your performance, the character you played. I thought it was integrity, it was classy, it was beautiful, and really paving the way and pioneering the way we see women on television. And so I want to give you a lot of kudos for
Wow.
just being, honestly, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it again now to your face, the best doctor on all of Star Trek,
Wow.
in my opinion. So we've been watching the new shows. I've watched the original series. Obviously, on Deep Space Nine, we had Dr. Bashir. But if I had to be in the care of one doctor on all of Star Trek, it would be you, Dr. Beverly Crusher.
Oh, well, that's really something. Do you have insurance? Because
Yes, I don't know if I can afford you right now, but but no, I think you give such exceptional care and really the compassion that you show and that you really it shows on screen is tremendous. It's intelligent, it's sophisticated, it's confidence, it's assertive, and I just think it's a brilliant portrayal of a doctor. And this is how you want your doctor to be, somebody who really puts your interests ahead of everything
right.
and makes those tough calls. I think you did an exceptional job at playing
Well,
Dr. Crusher.
what I loved in particular was the conflict that Crusher would have with Picard regarding the Prime Directive versus the Hippocratic Oath. That to
Right.
me, intellectually, really an interesting ethical argument. And there is no right and wrong. It's like there's individual choice you have to make, and you have to be willing to stand up to the consequences. And what I loved about it was that it would get viewers, perhaps, to think, what would I have done? Am I loyal to the rules, the Prime Directive? Am I loyal to do no harm? And that to me is what we're so lacking today, is people want to see things black and white, and nothing is black and white. It's full of contradictions, full of ambiguities, and you have to find your own, use your own compass and find where your ethical, where it's just pointing for you, the ethics of your life, how you feel about others.
Yeah. And that's what you represented so well, is the Hippocratic Oath that doctors take to remain ethical and to make those decisions based on the good of the patient, the good of the right versus wrong in that instance. And I think I just failed to give you credit also for one other thing, and that is your portrayal as a mother early on, throughout this series, because that's another aspect to what you bring to Star Trek, and that we have seen at a high level, which is your parenting. And you as a mother has been a phenomenal impression, which led, I believe, in some way to them exploring Cisco and his son. So I want to thank you for that as well.
Well, I had always wanted there to be. Thank you for that. That's one of the reasons I lost my job. Is I was intensely concerned that they did not. My whole position was, well, wait a minute. I've raised single-handedly this genius, but it's clear that I love him by behavior, and I worry about him, and he does all sorts of screw ups. But I believe in his intellect. But why do I never have a very good intellectual conversation with him, or philosophical conversation? That was always with the men. And I said, I understand he's missing his male figure. He lost his father. So I get that he needs to have some of it. But all of them, with all the male characters other than his mother, that didn't make sense to me. I said, you need to, and actually Terry in Picard had no scenes with me and my son. And I asked him, I said, Terry, you've got to have something between the mother and the son. I mean, there's got to be some moment. And he put it in, because I think a lot of times, a lot of the writers were male, and they probably were thinking, I should be home with my kid sometimes when they had pressures and they couldn't. I mean, understandable. I'm not judging them. I'm saying, so they might be vicariously writing this character where the man gets to talk to the son or whatever, the stand-in son. But I always just wish there had been a little bit of that with Crusher, because, I have a son and he and I talk all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's not just about, are you being a good boy?
Right. Right.
It's about, your definition of failure, what your ethics, how do you feel about the world? How do you feel about immigration? I mean, all of this stuff. You talk about everything. So anyway, but I wanted that. So I tried in every possible way I could to squeeze that in there. And I happened to really love Will Wheaton, so it was not hard to do. I loved Ed Scalia's. I mean, so that was great. And what's interesting to me, if I can just go on for a second,
Please.
is I now, in the last few years of going to cons, there's definitely an age group that grew up with a single parent in their own lives. And Beverly Crusher meant a lot to them and that parent, male or female. That was something that they watched together. And several of them, I mean, I was moved to tears by this one fellow. I mean, it really, when they see me, it has nothing really to do with me. It has to do with their thinking of the parent who has passed, who's no longer there. Mm-hmm. And they see me and they feel the missing of this person they loved. And it brings up emotion that sometimes just astonishes them. And I'm like, no, this is good. This is why you came to the con. Just feel it. Don't be afraid of it. I think it's a really cool thing to acknowledge that you did this together. It's about you and your mother, or you and your father. It's not about me, but I am a very happy witness to this moment. And just stay with it. It's beautiful, I find that very moving. And I'm very happy. I wasn't aware of it at all at the time, but I'm very happy that Gene was smart enough to put a single parent in there. And I loved what he did with Cisco and being a parent. I thought that was absolutely wonderful.
Well, this is all beautifully said. Go ahead, Sirach. What were you saying?
I just want to really highlight what you said and just recap. Star Trek being the platform by which, we have all of these conversations and these discussions that further our thought process and allow us to critically think of problems. But I also want to say that it doesn't happen outside in a vacuum. It happens as a result of you and people like you that push for certain things to be represented on screen. And so this, process is not something that just the writers do or just the Gene Roddenberry did. It is a community effort where Nichelle Nichols pushes for something, where you push for something. We saw Denise talk about struggling with how they were writing her character, and clearly there was a gap between their understanding of how they wanted to portray women in television, and I think you forced them to change.
I don't know about that. You might be giving me too much credit there. I know that I lost my job because of it, but I feel that I said in that first season, I said, why do I never have scenes with women characters? Never. It was just it's like it was years of talking about it, and then the first scenes were things like where we're talking about men or something, or we're working out. It was, I never had a scene with Tasha, just Tasha and me, never. And so yeah, I had come from academia and other things, and so I was used to speaking up. And I I have way too much intensity. So many times in my life, I have shot myself in the foot, and I'm trying my best to learn. But it is hard.
Well, I don't know if you should, because I think that intensity is what
Yeah.
everybody appreciates about you and what you brought to the role. And you've spoken like a true mother. Sirach's giving you compliments about the character and your acting and this and that. And you honed in on the relationship with your son and how important that was in real life and on screen. And that is what really resonates in real life. That is what led the bridge to Sirach and his role with Cisco. That is what created so many heartfelt sentiments from so many fans to you, to Sirach, to everybody around you guys. That's what really touches people. So we really appreciate the fact you may not want to fight that at this point. You may just want to accept it, be grateful for it, and continue on with it.
I am very grateful. I have learned so much, and it's not bullshit when I say the fans have actually taught me an enormous amount, because I did not understand the impact of the role model, and I really just didn't get it. And in the beginning, it was an older group of fans, and they were totally different. I mean, and when finally, I would say it's since the 25th anniversary. I would say since that period, because I didn't do a lot of cons. And that's when I started to comprehend the impact and appreciate by learning how the fans felt about it, what it meant to them, and discussing things about it, and realizing the great need we have for the hope and the future. I mean, I used to say that, but I didn't really in my depth get the truth of that gut feeling of we need hope, and it does give it to us when we watch the show. I mean, people say, yeah, I've seen it 100 times, it's on the background, I'm doing other things, but it calms me down.
Oh yeah, we get that a lot.
And that's really funny. And so I have to slip into Descent here. So I haven't watched, and there's episodes of I haven't even watched ever, maybe, of TNG, I swear to God. And I saw more episodes of Star Trek when I did a cruise. I was like, oh my God, I had, you know what I mean?
I'm the same
Right.
way. I was the same. I was like, wow, I've never seen this stuff
I know,
before.
and I'm like watching Deep Space Nine is great, and you're watching these and you go, oh, that's funny, oh, that's wonderful, and they kept holding me back. I think I got this in the last couple of years because they knew they were going to have Voyager, and they knew they were going to have a female captain, so they wanted to hold off. That's why they didn't want me lots on the bridge, because they wanted to wait so that was going to be this big deal. But at least in All Good Things, I was captain of my own medical ship. And what's funny is, like, Michael Westmore, who I dearly love, we love each other. He was putting on all of the age makeup, and I kept saying, no, we're going to be able to fix that in the 20, whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have to have all this stuff. You're just, and going, man, I try to put it on her and she'd take it off. I'm like, look at the way people are now. I mean, seriously. But it's funny things that they had to figure out how to show someone was not now. But so but when I watched Descent the other night, I was like, wow, this is a dated show. That's what my first went to the slowness of it compared to the new things, compared to Picard, where stuff is happening and moving around. We didn't have those cameras. When you start to, it's just so much slower, and it's so theatrical, like we're on a proscenium stage. So many of the scenes where there's large groups of people. I mean, it was fascinating because I hadn't watched for so long. I don't mean that as a judgment that it was bad or good. It just was, it was so different than, like, I'm sure Starfleet Academy is. And there's just technically the way the scripts are, the speed of action is so different.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I like that, actually. To be honest with you, I do, and I'll tell you why.
It's more patient.
I believe respected the intelligence of the audience, so
Mhm.
they gave us a lot more cerebral stuff. They gave us a lot more technological stuff.
Okay, that's
They
Yeah,
fair.
explained a
totally
lot of,
agree.
yeah, and so we were able to say, oh, that's okay, that makes sense, and these kinds of terminologies actually do exist, and so they respected our intelligence by giving us really high comprehensive stuff,
Oh,
and I like that.
interesting. Thank you for saying that. That helps me because again, that was my like instant reaction. But of course, it makes sense, and it makes sense in terms of what I just told you about fans saying it calms them down. And it's true, we have so much information that we have to process so quickly. It makes sense. Something slower. Absolutely. So yeah, okay, thank you. That's what I mean. I keep learning from I'm learning from
Well,
other
Well,
people.
they couldn't, the audience couldn't skip to the next episode. So back then, you were held
Right.
captive. They're telling you a good story. They're trusting that the audience is watching, is learning, is listening. It was just a different world back then. But if you'll notice, people are still going back to Netflix or to Paramount Plus and rewatching those old episodes. So
Yeah.
clearly they like that pace. They like
Yeah.
that comfort. They like that trust in the audience. And you mentioned the episode specifically. I did want to ask you if you can remember that moment back then coming into the seventh season. Were you aware that this was going to be the final season? Was there a certain mood? Was there a certain feeling? Was there anything different? Or was it just kind of business as usual?
No, I felt, I had just had a baby. Um, I I knew this was the last season, and I felt that in the last season, with the exception of maybe Sub Rosa, but in the last season, finally the character was getting back to what I had been told she was going to be, because I had missed for all those seasons being the sexual, having the relationship with Picard. And I had not been told that by Patrick, and he was the one who wanted to have more female love interests, but he did
Oh,
not tell me that when he called me to say, will you come back? And if I'd known that, I'm not sure if I would have come back, to be honest with you. But I mean, obviously, it's changed my life in so many wonderful ways. I'm very happy I did, but at the time, I'm not sure I would have. But if I finally felt, yes, the women were being seen, we were back to an ensemble much more in a sense. And I
mhm.
loved how they wrote the last two episodes of, you know, trying to talk about the future in a way. I thought that was really lovely and interesting that the writers did that. Um, and I thought Attached was a very interesting episode.
oh yeah.
It was interesting that they were finally going to deal with it because fans were like, what the hell? Are we not, uh, it just at least dealt with it somewhat. But then, when I was doing All Good Things, I was shooting a John Wells pilot in Portland at the time. So I was going back and forth, and it was rather fraught for that reason. Uh,
Yeah.
so, and then I had this toddler. So lots was going on, and I didn't have to. And we knew already we were going to do Generations. We had signed a contract that had us locked in. If they chose, we had 4 movies. If they chose to do 4,
Hmm.
so I didn't feel this was goodbye. I'm never going to see people again. Okay,
Okay.
that feeling. Other people had that feeling somewhat, but I never did. I felt great. I'm ready to try something else, ready to be with my son, who I was just thrilled to death that I was able to have a child. It was great.
Oh, what a blessing. Yeah, because Ryan was very curious about that. I was curious, and you answered my other question, which was at what point did you know that you were going to do films? And it seems like during this 7th season, you're already kind of locked in contractually
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember exactly when, but
at
you know,
some point during
at
the
some,
7th season.
and yeah, I mean, at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, I mean, I just think you've been so fantastic. The only time I can say now, because I've watched this Picard series now as well, so we did review that show, and I was a little upset about the whole Jack situation.
Okay.
I didn't know. I was. I was like, how could you keep this from the card
Okay.
this whole time?
But you see, that I said to Terry, I don't want to do it if she's going to be the villainess, because Crusher would not ever have done that
Yeah,
to Picard.
Right.
But
exactly.
all right, you want to hear here's my comeback on this.
Okay.
Well, first, Patrick, on the last day before we were shooting that scene, he got something that I wanted taken out. Okay, he's got the power, I don't. But there was a thing where it was very clear that my son had said to me, "Are you going to do? I'm asking you to not do this, to not put us together. I will do it when I'm ready." And are you choosing him over me, your son? That he was putting me also in a tight spot. That's number one. Number two was, in my history of it, I had tried many times to be in touch with him and had trouble at different times, and there was something that happened quite early on that I was like, uh-oh, he does have a target on his back. I have to get out of here. There was something. I didn't know what it was, but I was very worried.
Mhm.
And there's one other thing. So that was the second element. I believe she did. I don't think she told him. She didn't send him an email. She wanted
She made attempts to go to try to get to him.
Right. And realize there's some danger. And the other thing is, when he says in the scene, I would have no problem with being a father now. That was just season 2 of Picard that he came to that. So he was just 1
Yeah.
year ago. Okay.
Right.
Vehemently for decades, he did not want children. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, but see, Patrick was going, I wouldn't have had a problem. Well, a year ago you would have. So wait a minute. Right.
Yeah.
I think it was really tough, and he really pushed every way to get it. Like poor me, Picard, who had this son, and I'm just not buying it. In my mind, there's nothing about Crusher that would have done anything like that. She's too loyal. She's
Yeah.
loyal. She
And
was very loyal
upfront.
And honest and
Yeah.
upfront. Exactly.
Yeah, she's the one who got in trouble for being so damn honest.
That's
Mhm.
right.
So I'm just not buying that. And so people just need to get. I always say, well, think of another backstory. If you felt there was a danger, and your son is also saying, "I hate the man." I mean, you can't force something to happen, and there was danger going on for several years. We'd get
Yeah.
our way out. I mean, and I also think, it happens when it happens. Think about people who are adopted. They don't want to know their real parent. And then finally, when they're ready, they do it.
Mhm.
If you force it, I don't know. So I really think I think it's up to the child. If the child is smart, I mean, if you've genuinely tried and there is danger, and I think that's why I think there was some incident that.
Yeah, I do recall that there was something that would have put him in danger
Yeah,
if it was known or something to that effect. And
absolutely.
they should have highlighted that element a little bit more.
But they didn't want that. So, I mean, you play it the best you can. And
you can.
and one of my favorite lines was taken out, and that's what happens.
That happens.
So
And it's tricky too, because you're trying to tell the story, but you also want to make your hero, who's Picard, stay a hero,
right.
So he can't have any blame. And
right.
And we love your character so much, and I'm like, she's such a good mom, and and so there's all of that happening. But I'm glad you clarified that for me, because now it's actually for the safety of the child that you did that. That makes more sense.
Yeah, I think that if for example, I just think that's it. I don't think there's anything that I know about that character, unless she had some weird virus on her. She wouldn't go, well, I'm not going to tell that bastard. I mean,
hey,
it's just,
protecting your child is all you need to say. That's rule number one.
That's
honestly,
rule
there's
number
nothing
one.
even beyond that needs to be
exactly.
said.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Gates, we only have you for a couple minutes here, but I do want to reiterate that we've been singing your praises for 6 seasons and on Picard as well. And everything that Sirach said to you at the top of this segment, he's also said in the past, just to verify that he has said that many times over. And everybody
Doctor in
agrees.
Star Trek. It's not
Everybody
even a
loves
question.
you because of the proper blend of professionalism, of strength and compassion, and
Ethics,
and
morality.
she would take ownership of a situation. And by the way, we got to see you as an acting captain for the first time. It's not
Leadership.
not just the pastor, but you were the captain of the Enterprise for a bit in this episode, which was great.
Couple times, yeah.
And you empowered your crew in this episode. There was a black ensign woman, Ensign Tate. You gave her inspirational courage to say, "Hey, no, be confident, and I believe in you, and I trust you." And I love that decision making by you.
I do too. I really liked the fact that even in that short time, I could do that. I was very aware of that. I was very aware of, like, there's a young woman. I believe in her. She's suggesting this. She studied. She did her dissertation.
Yeah.
Well, let's go and let's trust her. Yeah.
I loved it. And Lee listened to her too. You were like, "Tell me about what your situation." She's like, "I'm only 6 weeks in the job," and you're like, "Okay, now I get." Instead of just like, "I don't care about you,"
Right.
You took the time to listen to her and empower her. I loved it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, she was great. I loved it. And that was the guy who was in that episode where I finally got to do a fight scene. The guy who played at the comms there.
Yes.
He was in that Sun episode, whatever, the symbiosis.
Suspicions.
Yes.
Suspicions.
Yes.
And I got to do some combat, which I loved. Finally.
That's so cool. So
you're such a trailblazer. You're so amazing. I'm watching you.
He will
on the
never
show
stop.
It's been amazing to watch you on this show.
God.
Your character has been phenomenal. And I keep yelling at Picard, like, "Would you hook up with her already?" And
Yeah.
being a curmudgeon.
Go
I
get
love you
Wes,
on
brother.
the show. Yeah, I love you on the show. I just think you are fantastic. And once again, best doctor on Star Trek, on all Star Treks.
All right. Well, all right. Get a free physical for that, okay?
All right. So here's some, very quickly, here's some other physical people that we'd like to say thank you to. Their names are Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julian Manosfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Cassandra G., Mark Zutkoff, Chris Garris, Linda Pages, Steve Case, Stephen Monk, Jonathan Capps, and of course, Jason M. Oken. Gates McFadden, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you so much.
Can't thank you.
It was blast. All right. You guys are the best. All right. Bye. Love you.
Thank you.
And
love you too.
Thank you. And everybody else, stick around. We will be right back on the Seventh Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton. This is the Free for All with Melissa Longo.
Yeah.
Also, Jason M. Oken is here.
Hi, everybody.
As is Allison Leach Hyde. Chris Garris is zooming in all the way from Southeast Texas.
I am.
Mark Zutkoff has 3 images behind him, if you can believe that. Carrie Schwent has something really cool going on behind her, but I'm not sure what yet. Jonathan Capps has joined us finally. He's on the bridge of the Enterprise D. Steve Case is twins with me today. Chris McGee is the Dark Lord.
Greetings.
And Matt has a very funny scene behind him. All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Seven 7.4.
Wow. Anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
6.8.
7.0.
7.4.
I like that one.
The actual answer is 7.7.
Wow.
Oh,
Who said 6.8? Jason?
I did.
Jason, he went hard on that one, boy.
Jason went low.
That may be
Jason's about
personal
to bring the
bias.
hammer.
He proclaimed it proudly, too. All right. Non-appearance mention. I got Dr. Soong. Was there any others? What about Chris McGee? Some kind of or some sort of?
I heard one this time. Picard, when he's describing that transceiver he lifted from the guard, says, I think that they use some kind of phase pulse technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Melissa Longo, please get us started off on the right track by telling us what you thought of this episode.
I wasn't that confused. I wasn't that confused. Yeah, I didn't dislike it. I found some very enjoyable moments, and I thought maybe for this I would go a different route than giving Brent Spiner's all the kudos, because he always gets them, even though they're well deserved. I would like to talk about the confidence of Dr. Crusher being in the captain's chair and her taking the lead. I thought she did a fantastic job running the ship, and I would feel confident as a crew member working under her. And she listens, she's open to suggestions, and she doesn't let her emotions get in the way. And I think that has something to do with her medical training and being a doctor. She has to not crack under pressure, and she has to think on the fly quickly, being in an emergency medical situation. So I think the captain chair fit her for this reason. And she's also got excellent bedside manner. So, I was very impressed with Dr. Crusher in the captain's chair. Overall, I think it was a pretty good episode for the most part. I would have liked to see more Hugh in this, and I would have liked to see Hugh and Geordi have a moment in this together as well. So these two things were missing for me in this episode. Oh, and I was surprised to read that Tracy Coco was one of the bots.
Yeah.
Borg.
I recognized her.
Drones.
The one that was kind of missing
Borg.
a head thing.
Yeah. That was cool. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Melissa P. Longo. Jason M. Oken. You said 6.8 rather proudly. Defend yourself.
Well, I guess that rating to some degree. I try not to sort of have my own personal bias creep into these IMDb guesses, but I just couldn't help myself. I find I've always found this episode very frustrating, not because it's necessarily bad, but because of how good it could have been. It's just, to me, it's just a missed on many different levels with a lot of potential. It is a part two to a part one that doesn't really live up to part one, in and of itself. There were sort of a lot of things, sort of a lot of balls in the air, and I'm not sure they caught all of them. It looks like they may have struggled a little with this script, and it went back and forth. And frankly, my feeling is that from what I've seen, it seems to have been recut considerably in editing, because even the order of the scenes is not as in the script that I saw. So they were fighting with this for a while. Yeah. And one thing is, you read the script and there's sort of a feeling of tension, of urgency. And I'm not sure it translated to what we saw on the screen. Everything is moving kind of slowly, and there's no sort of, there's no tension. There's no, again, that urgency that you would want to see in an episode like this. I mean, the Borg kind of move a little, back to moving, like these, zombies from the 1960s. Yeah, they were doing it. They were filming outside. It was hot, and those costumes were what they were. But there was a lack of urgency to all of this, and that frustrated me quite a bit. Again, there are very good parts in it. I mean, the fact that Gates got to do what she got to do. I mean, I don't know if they brought James Horn in. It kind of happenstance that there's a bit of sort of this tail plot from for the metaphasic shield, and they got the same actor there, obviously without the makeup on. It was kind of interesting. The performances are great. I mean, Brent is Brent. I mean, you can see sort of even the subtleties with his performance of Lore and Data when he's under the influence. That's great. You can see that. But a lot of the scenes to me were kind of static, especially the ones that were done in that hall. I know the set wasn't very big and they didn't have a lot to work with, but it's just a lot. You just have people standing and talking for these long scenes, and it's not what it was supposed to have been. And that's what I find so frustrating. There's some other things. It's just, again, to me, it's a missed opportunity. It could have been a hell of a lot better. There's a lot of story, and Melissa, you talked about Hugh being sort of a minor part of it, and he should not have been. The fact that they brought him back and devoted so much of the conversation, it should have been a bigger part of the story, and it really wasn't. Again, it seemed rushed, and I'm not sure there was I don't think they stuck the landing for the two-parter. That's all. That's what I find so frustrating.
Wow, I did not realize he played Dr. Joe Brill in Suspicions, that snooty guy on the bridge. That was the most perfect casting. That guy, you could just put him in any movie and he's that guy. He's the snooty waiter or whatever. Anyway, great stuff. Guy. Thank you very much, Jason M. Oken. Allison Leach Hyde still tips well to snooty waiters. What do you think of this one?
Always tip well to your waiters. Always. All right, now on to this episode. I love that we open up with a acting captain's log from Beverly. I thought that was a nice touch to start the season, not just the episode. Loved that. I will, of course, be on the same train of I love Beverly Crusher as captain because she was awesome. She listened. She asked for input. She trusted her people. She was interested in her people. The scene with her and Tate, I really liked when Tate was nervous. I mean, she's an ensign. She's been there for 6 months and she's now at tactical. Like, that's terrifying. That would be completely terrifying, especially for a science officer. Like, here, you get to go shoot things now. So I can understand that. And I thought she did a lovely job with boosting her confidence and finding out about her. So really liked that. I love seeing Geordi, Picard, and Troy as a group together. They're like one of my favorite working groups. Thought they did great this episode too. I was a little annoyed about the whole bit about how Troy says no emotions are negative. Data responds to that, and then they call them negative every single time after that. So I'm like, hey, we're contradicting ourselves, but I understand what they were going for, but I'm like, you just literally contradicted yourself for the entire episode. So that was, I guess, my biggest nitpick. I did not save it for things left unsaid. I'm sorry. I'm so sad we didn't get a Hugh and Geordi scene because that was his friend. He asked about him. It was so sweet. And that's really what brought him out to like, no, I'm going to help because I want to help my friend. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this more. I liked it. There was a lot of so many little plot points that they had to tie together. I think they tied them together well. Could it have been done better? Yes, it definitely felt rushed, but I enjoyed this episode.
As did we all, I think, hopefully. Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde. All right, we're going to Southeast Texas. Chris Garris, what'd you think of this one?
Hello. When I first started to watch this episode today and whatnot, I was like, there's really nothing, I hate to say it's like that super special about it that just makes you stands out. It's a decent episode, but it just gets kind of slow, like everybody's just saying. But obviously seeing Crusher in the captain's chair was great. And Brent, Spiner he has always done such a great job of playing Lore and Data, to be able to just have those different nuances, even just in his facial tics at times. It's so cool. And I really start looking at Lore this time, and it was, oh my God, I've never heard someone that has such a savior complex as he did. Like, he was like, I'm going to save these Borg. I am, their Messiah, basically, is kind of where he was going. I was like, God dang, Laura, you're really landing on thick. I did love the typical Star Trek trope when the sensors don't work and they can't scan the planet to find anything. That's standard issue for that. One thing, and I'm gonna say it here instead of things that just said, that kind of that really bugged me was, and until Janeway, I probably would have never even thought of this, but hearing them kept on calling Dr. Crusher Sir was just getting, just I don't know. I just wanted to hear him say "ma'am" instead of "yes, sir." It was starting to actually bother me. And I liked how Tracy Coco was all over this episode. She was the Borg. She was on the bridge multiple times in this one, so she really had quite a bit of screen time for a change. And and like someone already mentioned, the actor who played Lieutenant Barnaby was also, the guy who tried to steal the metaphasic shielding back in Suspicions, and he also was the future guy in Enterprise, the shadow from the future that we never got to actually see, but his voice, I was like, I know that voice. And sure enough, I verified that's where he came from. And of course, poor Geordi, he's like, can he not get picked on or have some experiment done to him? But that's just par for the course for that poor guy. And I'll save this for things left unsaid, but overall, it's not a bad episode. It's just kind of just plain, just not a lot of excitement. But anyway, definitely one I would still watch.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Chris Garris. All right, Mark Zutkoff, what did you think of this episode?
I wasn't thrilled with this part of this story. It's slow-paced, as has been said. It's somewhat mean-spirited and relatively predictable, as we are confident that by the end, Data will be back to his normal, supposedly unemotional self. That said, it was great to see Beverly Crusher in command. At first, she's too soft-spoken in the role, but she gets into it fairly quickly. She and Riker get into it too, which is unfortunate, though in character for number one. Later in the episode, she carries command extremely well. While we didn't need for Lieutenant Barnaby to be snarky to Ensign Tate, it does set us up for a great reversal later in the episode. Still, it's an example of the mean-spiritedness that I don't expect from the crew of the Enterprise, especially in a crisis situation. For most of the episode, Data is so misguided. He was never Picard's puppet, but Picard doesn't debate him about it and relies entirely on the reactivation of Data's ethical program later in the show. Of course, you can tell when a Soong android is evil by his using contractions, including Data while he is controlled. This is another entry on the Geordi must suffer bingo card. O'Brien probably still has him covered in the number of times, but it's closer than one might think. Put a pin in Geordi's story about when he and Data went swimming. Data's lack of buoyancy might be addressed eventually. Great to get the call back to metaphasic shielding from the Crusher-centric episode Suspicions. The Riker and Worf scenes seem to be peppered into the episode at odd times. There's the reunion with Hugh Borg, which doesn't ring entirely true, and the scene where they reiterate the use of the environmental control ducts to reach the surface is placed too close to the final battle to make sense, especially since there was a deleted scene that shows Riker and Worf rescuing Troy and Geordi between the two. And how did Hugh join the other Borg unnoticed? When Data shoots Lore, the evil android is immobile but can still talk, while Data deactivates him by pushing buttons in his head. Why didn't Data just use Lore's off switch? And Lore saying, "I love you, brother," is BS when he was about to kill Data moments earlier. Good to show Geordi and Data reconciling, but hesitantly, which was a nice touch. Put a pin in the supposedly damaged emotion chip. That might be addressed eventually, too. And my home pun of the episode, Riker and Worf needed to use the environmental control ducts to get their ducks in a row.
Thank you very much, Mark Zutkoff. All right, Carrie Schwent is the crafty bear. What did you think of this episode?
I like it. I think I actually like it a little bit more than part one. So once again, queen of the unpopular opinion. But no, yeah, I very much liked it, and I will jump on the pun train and say that Captain Beverly crushed it because she was awesome. I mean, it's right there. I couldn't not. It's right there. Yeah, she was fantastic. All of her decisions, she was competent in. She sat in that chair like a boss lady that she is. Good job, Dr. Beverly. Yeah, I caught the metaphasic connection with the good looking fellow underneath all that makeup with Lieutenant Barnaby, and my goodness, that man's got a jawline that could cut glass. And I kept thinking he really with that kind of jawline, he needs to play a Cardassian. And when I looked him up, sadly he did not play a Cardassian, but he did play a Jem'Hadar in a couple of DS9 episodes. So you get the jawline working with a slightly similar race. I really enjoyed Barnaby and Tate's kind of chemistry, especially near the end when he gets all excited for her and then's like, oh wait, good job. My headcanon says the two of them within a week were already dating. They eventually got married and had like 5 kids. I liked their chemistry. I watch a lot of soap operas, so that's naturally where, and I used to read a lot of romance novels, so that's naturally where my brain goes. And I will jump on the Hugh train because I recently did a slightly deep dive into Star Trek Picard. I was a guest on a different podcast, and we were discussing the episode Nepenthe. So I went very much into that, and I got the line from Hugh in this episode that we did not get in Star Trek Picard when he asks about Geordi. Sadly, we don't get the follow-up with the scene of them together, but at least he asked. And having watched Picard, you can see in this episode like the seeds of that project director that you meet on the reclamated Borg cube later in Star Trek Picard. He's already starting to help out his fellow Borg. He cares. Picard is absolutely correct when he is basically already their leader. He just didn't quite realize it yet, or needed Picard to remind him that he really already was. And he was just adorable. Having met the guy in real life, he's very, 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 very nice guy. Couple things that I noticed. Lore's pupils, when as he's shutting down, the pupils shrink and then it's just all white. That looked very, very cool. I didn't notice that the first time, but the second time when I was watching it again, I noticed it then. And in the scene where Data is pretending to be Picard and Geordi's all like moving around, he comes this close to pulling his arm completely out of that restraint, and you could see he notices it when his sleeve catches on the belt, and he quick gets his hand back underneath before it's all the way out. Stuff like that just amuses me. And before I get to the limerick, under the category of I wish I was blind, I love horror movies. The gorier the better. The Saw franchise is my favorite horror movie franchise. But did the controls for the motion chip have to be under his fingernail? And did he have to pry it up so many times? Oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. But Data at the end, when he's sitting there and Spot's there with him, and seeing Spot this time was a little bit harder because I just lost the cat who was an orange tabby, just like his, and his ashes are actually sitting right here next to me. But yeah, when Geordi walks up to the desk and just absentmindedly starts petting it, that's what you do around cats. If there's one there and you're talking, your hands just automatically start petting them. It's just what you do because they're soft. But I thought about doing the limerick from Hugh's point of view, but nothing quite called out to me, so I decided to go from Data's point of view instead. So I'll finish with that. Emotions and no ethics made me bad. At my actions, I hope Geordi is not mad. I know Laura had to be stopped. The emotion ship I will not adopt. I should see Counselor Troy and unpack.
Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear. All right, Jonathan Capps out in California's beautiful Central Valley. What did you think of this episode?
So I'm not a big fan of this episode. I don't like hate it or anything, but after the events of Descent Part 1, I kind of do feel like this was a big letdown. At the end of Descent, at the end of Descent Part 1, they had the two brothers who are on the stage that are going to destroy the Federation, and then I kind of feel like there was nothing in this episode that kind of reinforced that at all. There was a lot of speechifying, a lot of, and at times a little slow, like others have mentioned. So not my favorite there. So the stakes of this episode just didn't feel like real to me. So it's kind of hard to get like fully invested or like think that anything bad was actually going to really happen. I kind of feel like it would have been more interesting if Data had been like actually persuaded or seduced by Lore as opposed to just being, controlled by him. I kind of feel like that would have made it maybe a more compelling story. So that's it kind of goes back to Part 1, but I still don't understand like why the entire ship or almost the entire ship needed to beam down and look for Data. To the point that you're leaving, a science officer at Tactical that's only been there for 6 weeks. I mean, that seems kind of, especially in that situation where there's a Borg ship out there. Those scenes were fun, but I do, and obviously I feel like Dr. Crusher did an excellent job as captain. It was hard for me to get past the kind of, is that realistic, in that particular situation. What was I going to say? I also didn't, kind of that, like people mentioned, the rivalry or that kind of one-upsmanship between, Lieutenant Barnaby and Ensign Tate. I just kind of felt like that came out of nowhere. And, I don't really understand, like, people said, if you're being professional, and especially in that kind of situation, I just felt like that was unnecessary. I know it kind of had a funny payoff at the end, but it just seemed strange to me. I did like seeing Hugh again. Like others have mentioned, I feel like he could have been used more. Or just better used in this episode. And it would have been nice to have some more interaction between him and Geordi, since that was most of the interaction between him and Geordi in Borg. But I did like that he asked about Geordi, and that's kind of what softened him a little bit to want to help, to save the crew at the end. One kind of thing in that interaction, like when Riker and Worf are talking to Hugh, it's funny how they have like no reaction whatsoever, like when they mention Lore. And at that point, they should have no idea about Lore. So it's just kind of funny that they're just like, oh yeah, it's Lore. This is what he does, So I just thought that was kind of funny. Let's see here. Oh, and so and then the scene, I also picked up on that scene with Geordi where it kind of took me out a little bit because his hand literally almost comes out completely from that strap, and you can see where LeVar Burton's actually literally putting it back in so it doesn't come out. That to me, that just was like really funny. I like to call back to the metaphysics shielding, and like people have mentioned, James Horan playing the actor that played Jabril, so that makes that line where Crusher asks Barnaby, if he's heard of metaphysics, the metaphysics shielding, pretty funny, because it's kind of an inside joke. At the end, when Lore tells Data that that he loves, I love you, brother. That, I don't know, there was just something about that I wasn't quite sure, like, was that just further manipulation, or was there some genuineness to it? Maybe both. I just wasn't quite sure. Like you said, he's already tried to kill him like at least 2 times in the episode before this, so it kind of seems kind of a strange kind of love, right? And then just finally, the final scene between Data and Geordi. I just kind of wish there had been a little bit more, because of the events of the episode and what obviously Data, while being controlled, was trying to do. I did like that they had a button scene. I just kind of wish maybe there'd been a little bit more to it. So, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts of the episode.
Cool, great stuff. Thank you very much, Jonathan Capps on the bridge of the Enterprise D. Steve Case, you know him as Joe Bugbuster. What'd you think of this one?
I liked it. I didn't love it. It did go slow, as some people mentioned, but I thought sometimes that actually worked. At the beginning, Data kicks off the episode by proclaiming, "The sons of Soong have joined together, and together we will destroy the Federation." Okay, that was over the top. But I've always been impressed with Brent Spiner, especially after meeting him in person. And rewatching this episode was a great reminder of how he can not only play some great roles, but he can even successfully play against himself. And like others mentioned, I also like Dr. Crusher. I think this may have been the only time that she actually had command, not counting later on Picard, but no spoilers about that. I like how she worked with the skeleton crew, especially Tate, who became the tactical officer after only 6 weeks on the Enterprise. And I enjoyed the one-upsmanship between Barnaby and Haight. Like Jonathan, I thought it was hokey, but I still thought it was fun. Hugh's monologue slowed things down quite a bit, but at the same time, it fascinated me. I wrote down part of it. He said, you probably can't imagine what it's like to be so lost and frightened that you'll listen to any voice which promises change. And then Worf says, even if that voice insists on controlling you? But Hugh said, yep, that's what we wanted. Someone to show us the way out of confusion. Lore promised clarity and purpose. In the beginning, he seemed like a savior. The promise of becoming a superior race, of becoming fully artificial, was compelling. We gladly did everything he asked of us, but after a while it became clear that Lore had no idea how to keep his promise. And that's when he began talking about the need for us to make sacrifices. And before we realized it, this was the result. That reminded me so much of how cults work, actually. They empty you out of yourself, and then they start to fill you with other stuff that maybe seems beneficial in the beginning, but eventually it all becomes about sacrificing for the cause. So this episode had so many nice callbacks to previous episodes. We had Lore, Dr. Soong, Hugh, metaphasic shielding, and of course the Borg. So I did like the episode, and also part one, since it wasn't just a setup for part two.
Ain't that the truth? Well, thank you very much, Joe Bugbuster, aka Steve Case. All right, Chris McGee, you're the Dark Lord. What do you got for us? Did you love this one?
Well, I echo many of the sentiments others have said, especially about Dr. Crusher and Hugh, but I'm in Jason's camp today. I think it's an okay conclusion to the story. I mean, we've seen it before. Our favorite characters get captured, put into a prison, then they subsequently break out of their cell by appealing to the jailer's good side or whatever. So it's not particularly innovative. And the plot seems to break down with why Lore bothered with helping the Lost Borg in the first place, why he was experimenting on them, etc. It's a decent episode. Like Allison, I also have a big nitpick that I'm not going to say for things left unsaid. I find it extremely hard to believe that Data would willingly betray his friends and claim that his time with them in Starfleet was wasted. He's known them for 6 years, while he barely knows his brother. Even with Lore disabling his ethical subroutines, it seems unlikely. Maybe it's because I don't get along with my own brother, and maybe because I've never suffered from an addiction that would make me hurt my friends or family just for another fix. So, and as everyone mentioned, in addition to playing the crippled Borg, Tracy also plays Lieutenant J as usual on the bridge. I thought that Lore's inspirational speech to one of his Borg drones, Goval, I believe, shows that he is a good leader by taking personal interest in each of his followers, yet his speech is delivered with the slimy grin of a villain that he pulled off quite well. And of course, like everyone else, I noticed the irony that Joe Brill's actor is in this episode, as well as the metaphasic shield technology. And I like Geordi's line at the very end regarding the emotion chip. Someday, when you're ready, ... As for the memorable quote of the episode, it may have been hokey, but I still like seeing Tate throwing Barnaby's line back at him with, I'll just have to, excuse me, I'll just have to be sure my calculations are accurate, Lieutenant.
Yeah, she got him there. Thanks very much, Chris McGee, the Dark Lord. All right, the Matt Boardman. What's up with you? What'd you think of this one?
Next Generation, they're two-parters. Sadly, the second episode never is quite as good as the first. And that's not to say that there are bad episodes, but it's like they always do a really good job of setting the table for you, and then you sit down and you realize, dang, this meal needs some salt or something, right? Or you could do like my wife did. Oh, I'm totally going to expose her. I'm so in trouble for this, but she made a pumpkin pie one time and forgot to put the sugar in it.
Oh no.
Lots of whipped cream with that pumpkin pie. But you know, that's kind of what this episode is, right? It's we and it feels like there was a lot going on that they probably could have made this even a third episode. Like it felt like it was a very rushed conclusion. That said, I absolutely love seeing Dr. Crusher, as everybody else has mentioned, in that command role. And it's like, this is the kind of stuff that I I had hoped that Crusher could have gotten more of throughout the series, right? Instead of just aimlessly falling in love with someone, the awkward, you know, oh, I'm in love with the Trill that's in Riker's body. That, oh gosh, that episode still is so cringy to me. But I love that she takes command and then also is able to guide these officers around her who are less experienced than her, than the senior officers. And some of what we see here, I feel like gets reflected when we get to Picard season 3. We see some of the Picard season 3 Beverly right here, and I'm hoping that's like this kind of stuff was like that inspiration for it. So it's just fantastic. I thought that a lot of what Lore was saying, and I found it very interesting. And he talks about how I'm trying to break you free from all this stuff. And yes, it is. It's very cultish. And without going too far down the rabbit hole with some things, it seems very relevant. And I find that very interesting about Star Trek is that sometimes you watch an episode and there are things that are said and it was written so many years ago, but yet seems very relevant today. And I think that in and of itself is why Star Trek is so important. It's because we as humanity, we are very, very slow to learn. We are very slow on the uptake. And we need episodes like this, which talk about the importance of our own identity, which talk about watching for those who would sell us that snake oil and the promise of a better life. And yet, in reality, Lore's purpose was not to make life better for the Borg. It was better to make life, or it was to make life better for himself. And so it's nice that we have things like this. And even though, yeah, it was maybe a weaker episode, there are still really good nuggets of knowledge and of introspection that you can grab from it that apply to our lives today.
I agree. Good stuff. Thank you very much. The Matt Boardman. All right, Jake's final take. Sirach, any final thoughts on this one? Unfortunately, you are muted. Happens to all of us.
Guys. Yes. No, I have a lot of individual thoughts, but I don't want to Borg you. Borg.
Oh.
There we go.
That's great.
I did like Dr. Crusher in this episode. I really liked how she empowered her crew around her. There was a moment there when Ensign Tate was being relieved by Barnaby, and she said, "No, I want you to stay," and gave her some more responsibility. Also took the time to listen to her and hear that it was her 6th week in, So she showed a lot of good leadership skills to me, and I like that. Also, by trusting her crew when they made suggestions, she listened, she rationalized whether that was a good move, and then she moved forward and said, "Yes, we're going with your idea. Yes, we're going with that idea," and she committed and was successful. So I really liked her leadership style. So that was on display. I also think that there was some really good moments, like delivery lines that were delivered. One of them was when Data says, "Give me your visor," and the way Geordi says "why," I really
Yes.
thought it was a very good delivery. It was like, why? Like, we're buddies, we're friends. Why would you, like, that I use this to see? And I thought that was a great delivery by LeVar Burton. And another moment there that was great delivery was where Data is talking to Lore, and he says, he cuts off his emotions, and he says, "You want some?" And he's begging him, "No, more pleasure, more pleasure." And he says, "All right, a little more." And the way he says that, it was just like, that was really devious on Lore's part, and great acting and delivery by Brent, I thought. Just a little bit of a wink, a little bit of a, playfulness. It was very good. Barnaby, to me, looks like Mark Alimo. I looked at Lieutenant Barnaby and I was like, this guy resembles Mark Alimo. Like, they could easily be related to some degree. So I really like to see that. Also, like, the back and forth between them, it did have the payoff, but it also kind of like is a throwback to kind of, chauvinism and things of that nature that I didn't think it would exist. Hopefully not by the time this star date comes around. We're not, underestimating people's abilities and qualifications based on whatever their looks, appearance, their sexuality, or whatever. Hopefully, we feel that everybody who's on board is qualified and has passed all the tests to be here and deserves to be here. So I didn't like it so much, but that's what made me kind of remind me of Mark Alimo. I was like, he's kind of a jerk like Ducat. But then a little bit. I like the callbacks here. There was a lot of callbacks, here, there, all of these callbacks, the memory chip, the metaphysics, all of that stuff. That was great. I like that. I did also pick up on a little bit on the biblical theme about, when Hugh says Lore began to experiment trying to remake us in his image. And, the idea of making somebody in your image, the biblical theme. And again, Star Trek takes a theme like that and rewrites it into a science fiction way. I like that. And yeah, I mean, we had some good moments here. It could have been effectively better? I think so, in a lot of ways. I think they try to put too many things together in one episode. For example, Crusher being a captain could have been a whole episode by itself. Just her being in a leadership position, a captain. That's an episode. Hugh's story arc didn't get the proper redemption that I believe it deserved based on what it was introduced with. So they gave us Hugh and they kind of put him on a moral pedestal based on his arguments that he made for his existence and why he should be that way. And then it kind of fizzles out in this episode, and his relevance and importance doesn't have the same impact. So I think they undermine what Hugh meant in the first episode. I mean, it was a decent episode. Again, I just felt like it was a little bit too many things jumbled all in one. And I think they could have spread this out or honed in exactly on what they wanted to say for this two-parter. But that's it. That's my final take.
That was Jake's final take, everybody. All right, that's it for us, everybody. Thank you to the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Steve Case, Jonathan Capps, Carrie Schwent, Mark Zetkoff, Chris Garris, Allison Leach Hyde, Jason M. Oken, Melissa F. Longo. Oh, that's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, that was an accident. For myself, Sirach, Melissa, and Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, thank you all very much for partying with us. We hope to see you again sometime soon. And until then, always remember the seventh rule.